Hey friends, so in art, improvement comes from drawing something, figuring out what we can do better, and then making those changes. So the fastest way to improve comes down to practicing in a way that lets us do those three things in the best way possible. And whether we draw as a hobby, aspire to become a pro, or already use our art skills to make a living, we all suffer from not having enough time, so how can we also do it in 1 hour? I spent the last couple of months trying to figure out just that, and after a ton of research and trial and error, I've come up with what I call the blind method. I've been regularly using it to improve my own art for the past while now, and I've found the results to be incredible, which is why I wanted to share it with you all in this video. I'll be going through what the method is, why it works, and demonstrate it step by step so you too can use it to quickly improve no matter what you draw or where you are in the learning journey. Also, since Pixel Heroes is kindly sponsoring this video, we'll be able to use the amazing art from their game as a demonstration example, which is just awesome, but more about them later. By the way, if you're new here, I'm Ori, I'm an illustrator, and let's get started. So I'm just going to give it to you straight. At its core, the blind method is doing studies from art you like, whether it's your favorite artist or game, by analyzing it and making a copy. I like to call these master studies since we are learning from the master. But here's the twist. You're going to do them blind. Yes, that means you're going to draw a copy of the reference without even looking at it. And here's the second twist. Most people only do one study. We're going to do three, all within 1 hour, and I'm going to show you how. Putting all that together, the blind method is draw a copy of an artwork you like without looking at the original 3 times in 1 hour. Sounds crazy? I know, but there's a method to this madness, and I'm going to explain why this actually works and is the fastest way to improve in 1 hour. First of all, you might be wondering, why master studies? Out of all the practice methods that exist, what makes this the fastest one for improvement? Well, since improvement comes from reflecting on our art and figuring out what we can do better and how to correct our errors, then what's most critical is getting quality feedback, which lets us do just that. So, how can we get that feedback? First, art isn't math, and there is no objective correct answer to anything. But we can personally find our correct answer in the art that we personally like and thinks looks good. If you've ever seen art that makes you go, man, I want to draw like that, then you found yourself a pretty good answer to learn from. And if you try to make a copy of that master work, it can become the correct answer with which we can compare with, and that gives us precise and high quality feedback on how to improve. At this point, you might be thinking, okay, Ori, I get it. Doing master studies is good and all that, but why blind? Why not just do them, I don't know, unblind like normal and sane people? The first time I heard the idea of doing it blind, I also thought it was ridiculous. Like, why would you even do that? It sounds like you're just making it harder than it needs to be. But in my quest to learn art, I read a ton of books and research on how to learn fast, and there was something I came across that was completely game-changing for me. Okay, imagine you're a student gearing up for a big exam. The clock's ticking, and you've got 3 choices on how you can study. 1, you can look at your notes and the textbook until you're confident you've got it memorized. This is called the review method. 2, you can test yourself on how much you remember and understand by trying to recall things from memory without looking at anything. This is called the active recall method. And 3, you can create a diagram to visually organize what you've learned. This is called the concept map method. So if you've only got time to do one of these, which should you choose to ace the exam? In 2011, researchers at Purdue University wanted to find out the answer, and the results might surprise you. In their experiment, they split up students into groups based off the different practice methods and gave them all the same amount of time to prepare for a test. When asked to predict how they would do, the students who reviewed the textbook thought they'd do the best, while the ones who practiced by trying to recall the information without looking at anything thought they'd do the worst. But the results weren't even close. The students who practiced using the active recall method actively destroyed everyone else by remembering almost 50% more in some cases. Not only that, but the students who used the review method and thought they did the best ended up actually doing the worst. So what does this have to do with art? Well, if we think about it, the normal way to do a master study is to have the reference open next to us the whole time we're making the copy. But this is essentially the art equivalent of studying with the textbook open and reviewing the information. So what we want to do instead is use the active recall method, which we can do by making the copy from memory without looking at anything. Keep in mind though that the goal isn't to become a mindless copy machine that's great at creating replicas. Instead, what we're trying to do is similar to the fastest way to learn chess. Okay, so you might have heard of the famous rule that it takes 10,000 hours to get good at something. But you've probably never heard of Anders Ericsson before. He's the one who did the research which the 10,000 hour rule was based on, and he's kind of a big deal when it comes to what science has to say about high performance. Sadly, he passed away a few years ago, but not before writing his magnum opus on how to get good, based off his 30 years of research, and I'm going to quote from it. Chess players improve most effectively by studying the games of grandmasters, trying to reproduce them move by move, and when they make a move that's different than what the grandmaster chose, they study the position again to see what they missed. And basically by doing so, they can learn the rules and principles the master uses to make a move so that they too can apply it in their own game. And we're trying to do exactly the same thing with the blind method. We study an artwork we like, try to reproduce it move by move, or in our case, stroke by stroke. And when we make a move that's different to the master, we study what we did differently and then fix that error. And just like with the chess example, this will let us learn the rules and principles the master uses so we can use it in our own art too. By the way, Ericsson actually mentions the blind method in his book, and you can pause the video here if you want to read what he says about it. Okay, I'll now show you how to do the blind method step by step, and for this demo, I'll be borrowing this beautiful illustration of Gil, King of Uruk, from Pixel Heroes. So the first step is to pick just one small part of the reference you want to learn. For example, if you want to study the head, like I'll be doing for this demo, I recommend to study just the face first without the hair. You can leave it for your next practice session. This is because unlike a normal study, we're going to draw completely based on memory, so it's best to limit the scope and keep things simple. Remember, it's always better to learn one thing well than try to learn many things at the same time and remember none of them. If you're a beginner that's just starting out, you might find that trying to draw the whole face is a bit too difficult. That's okay and to be expected since you're still trying to figure things out. And in that case, I recommend breaking the parts up even more, such as studying only the eyes first before gradually adding the other parts of the face in. Having picked the part we want to study, it's time to start off by doing a quick analysis. With the head, I'm mainly trying to get a feel for the overall structure, breaking it down into simple shapes and figuring out where the parts of the face line up. All we're trying to do at this stage is just understand what we're looking at. With the analysis done, we're now going to do a normal copy with the reference open. This step is optional, and you can go straight into the blind copy if you like. But I recommend doing it because it'll help give you more confidence to do blind copy. So here's how to do the normal copy. First, draw a copy with the reference open. Once you've made the copy, make a duplicate of the reference, set it to 50% transparency, and put it underneath. Adjust the size of your copy so they roughly match up. Then make 2 duplicates of your copy, so you have 3 in total, and line them up next to each other. Now set your pen to a different color, and it's time to find improvement points through the following 3 steps. Compare. Compare your copy with the original underneath. Fix any differences by tracing or using the transform tool. Analyze. As you're doing this, note down the changes you are making. The key here is to think, why did the master make a different move than me? And write down your best guess. For example, here, the eyes and nose are in a higher position in the original than in my copy. Thinking about the reason why? My guess is that I didn't consider the tilt of the face enough in my copy. And when I compared the two, I observed that raising it like in the original does make the face look more tilted up, so I note that down. This gives me a handy principle I can use to tilt the face up more when I draw. And it also makes me reflect on whether I raise the facial features high enough when I normally draw the face tilted up. So just like this, we can learn the rules and principles of the master one at a time. These small lessons are like 1% improvements that stack up and lead to big level ups in your skill over time, so don't underestimate them. By the way, it's going to be tempting to just skip the note-taking process and do it all in your head. But actually writing them down will force you to think things through more clearly, and you'll come up with better principles, so don't skip it. Next is to fix it. Once you've written down your note, it's time to fix the error manually on the copy next to it, without tracing, so you'll be using your brush and eraser for this one. This helps solidify what you learned by applying it. Then continue to repeat this process of compare, analyze, and fix until your copy matches the original. By the end of it, the duplicates of your copy should look like this. The left one you fixed by tracing for comparison and analysis. The middle one you manually fixed to apply what you learned. And the right one is your original copy, so you can compare the difference with the fixed version, and it's actually kind of motivating because you look at it and you kind of go, hey, I know how to make that better and look like the master's work now. By the way, if you're finding this helpful, I hope you consider subscribing so you don't miss out on any new tutorials I make. Now it's time to do the blind copy. The steps are exactly the same as the normal copy, just without the reference. So hide the original and start drawing the copy from memory while keeping in mind the lessons you learned from before. Our first attempt at the blind copy is probably going to be bad since we're literally trying to draw how the master draws based on what we remember, and what we can't remember, we're gonna be making it up. So I like to take some of the pressure off by reminding myself that, hey, the first one isn't going to be good, and all I'm doing is making my best guess and improve from there. Once we've drawn the blind copy, it's time to see how we did. So unhide those references, And just like before, make 2 duplicates of your copy. Then compare, analyze, and fix to find out where you made a different move than a master, and figure out what rules and principles you might be missing. This first attempt actually didn't turn out that bad, and I managed to keep in mind the face tilt principle from before. But I noticed that I made the cheeks sharper than the original, which might be a habit of mine. In my opinion, making the cheeks rounder and softer like the original creates a more youthful impression, so I note that down and now have another principle which I can use. By the way, the reason you note down doesn't have to be the actual reason why the master does it. The principle you come up with just has to be useful and generally help you draw better. This does mean that some of the principles you come up with might be incorrect and not very applicable since your best guess is still, well, a guess. But that's okay. Learning is a journey, and as you continue to improve and do more studies, you'll automatically start adjusting and replacing the less helpful principles with better ones. So in that sense, it's all about creating a personal toolkit of lessons we can apply when drawing to get a better outcome. Once we've done our blind copy, the next step is to do another one because with this method, the more repetitions we do, the more we'll learn. Each rep usually takes anywhere between 10 to 20 minutes, and you want to do as many as you can within the hour, aiming for at least 3 blind copies in total, which in my opinion is the minimum effective dosage for seeing decent improvement with the method. But this is more of a general rule of thumb since the actual time a copy will take depends greatly on what you're studying. So in practice, you might end up doing a bit more or less within the hour. Also, if you did a normal copy first, you can count that in as 1 rep time-wise. The next step is of course to reward yourself for a job well done. And if you're a gamer, you might want to check out today's sponsor, Pixel Heroes. Pixel Heroes is a newly released RPG idle game for mobile with an aesthetic that combines classic JRPG pixel art with beautiful live 2D illustrations. In a world where the heroes of the world fail to defeat the Demon Lord, you play as the Executor, the one chosen by the goddess to save the magical land of Emend. The battles all run on auto, and something I thought was really neat was that you could actually do other things while the battles are running, such as customizing your character or even running another battle in the event or arena.
Your tricks mean nothing to me. There's still much for you to learn.
There's a huge roster of heroes to collect, each with their own charm and unique set of powerful abilities, which allows you to try out different party combinations and create the perfect lineup. For example, Aneda is an assault type that plays like an assassin, so she has this skill that targets the enemy with the lowest HP and deals massive damage to it. And if she defeats the enemy using that skill, she'll automatically use it again. So I had a blast building my party around her, setting it up so that the other members will lower the enemy's HP using AoEs and other skills, so that later on, Aneda can just sweep in and wipe the entire enemy clean using her skill. And it just feels amazing when you completely turn the battle around this way. With multiple ways to summon heroes, the game is also quite generous with their pools, such as running this event where you can get up to 3,650 summons by simply logging in every day. So if you find that kind of game is up your alley, you can download and play Pixel Heroes for free through the link in the description or by scanning the QR code on screen. If you really want to supercharge your learning, I recommend doing the blind method multiple times on the same thing. Of course, you don't have to do it all at once, and I even recommend spacing each practice session at least 1 day apart. And if you're the type that draws every day, the blind method works really well as a daily practice exercise and you'll improve quickly. But if your time for drawing is more limited, then feel free to space it out to suit your schedule. As for how many times you should blind copy a piece, it really depends on how much you want to learn from it. If you've done 3 copies and you feel like you've absorbed everything you wanted, then that's enough. But chances are you'll probably benefit from doing more. So on screen are some recommendations on how many to do based on your learning goals. Again, these are just rough guidelines to get you started, and once you've done the blind method a couple of times, you'll have a good feel of the process and how many copies you should do for each thing. After finishing your studies, I also recommend drawing something original to put the principles you learned into action. You can choose to draw a full illustration or just draw some sketches, both work. But do make sure to challenge yourself to draw from a different angle than what you studied, so you apply the principles to a new situation. Because if you draw it from exactly the same angle, you kind of run the risk of mindlessly making another copy without learning to apply the principles in an original way. Remember, the point of the blind method isn't to make replicas, but to learn rules and principles we can apply to improve our own original art. You can pretty much use the blind method to get better at anything, whether it's improving how to draw hands, facial expressions, body types, or coloring and shading. But do note, however, that it's not going to teach you the fundamentals, like how to draw a box correctly in perspective. Having knowledge of the fundamentals will also help you come up with better principles when you analyze. For example, you can relate the head tilt principle in the demonstration to how the center line of a box moves up or down as it's tilted. So, if you've never learned the fundamentals before, it can be worth your time to at least get a basic gist of it, such as learning how to draw a box and understanding how light and shadow works. Now, one concern you might have is that, oh man, with all these rules and principles, it's gonna be impossible to remember them all when I draw. At first, it might feel a bit overwhelming since you are learning and remembering new things. But over time, you'll begin to internalize it all and it becomes automatic and part of your intuition. Weirdly enough for me, the way this has manifested is that I often have a feeling when something is off. And when I do, I think to myself, okay, this is what it usually feels like when the head is off or when the proportions are off. And actually, it's been surprisingly accurate many times. If you're worried about resembling one artist too much, you can consider studying different parts from different artists that inspire you. You can go, I really like how artist A draws their eyes, how artist B draws hair, and how artist C uses colors, and study from them all. Combined with your own personal touch, they'll come out no matter what you learn from all these different sources of inspiration will eventually lead to your own unique style. That said, if you're just starting out, it might be easier to study from just one master first, because their rules and principles will fit together more cohesively, kind of like pieces that belong to the same puzzle. Finally, in my own journey in art, and more recently on YouTube, I've personally found that we often only find our own voice after we sounded a lot like other people, and that's okay. It's all part of the journey as a creator, and all we have to do is keep on going and continue to learn. Anyway, quick thanks again to Pixel Heroes for kindly sponsoring this video. Link to the game is below if you're interested. And special thanks goes to my friend and wonderful artist Fishy for helping me test and improve the blind method. If you're still watching, thank you so much for getting all the way to the end. And you might want to check out this video on the fastest way to learn anime style art. The blind method is actually based on the framework I talk about there, and I guarantee you'll find it useful. Also, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any new ones. This was Ori, and I hope you have a lovely rest of the day. Bye!